Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Linux Voice Podcast Series 4, Episode 7. It's time for a completely mic-free podcast. I'm Andrew Gregory.
I'm Ben Everard.
And I'm Graham Morrison.
And in this fun-packed episode, we promise you no mics whatsoever. There will, however, be news, and there obviously won't be any vocalise your whatnots or thingamies because Mike does them. But there will be finds of the fortnight, aka discoveries of the 2 weeks. Oh, Mike, where are you already?
This is a special edition, I think.
Special in inverted commas. It's special. So if you like the sound of this podcast, but in a slightly less special, more organised, more professional manner, that's the Linux Voice magazine, which is available at shop.linuxvoice.com for all to buy and subscribe to and derive joy from. It's wonderful reading the words, especially so when you consider that the digital versions are unencumbered by DRM of any kind, so you can share them and do all the other great DRM things. Should we crack on then?
That brings us on to the news.
It does.
The news. Right, this fortnight, what's been going on in the world of open source software? Let's Encrypt, the project originally started by Mozilla and a few other people to create secure websites, basically certificates to make it really easy to add encryption to websites. It's been running since September. It's now out of beta. It's running on 3.8 million websites.
Wow.
That's a lot of websites.
That's phenomenal.
I tried counting the websites, counting them, how many there were, and I got lost at about 90. So I think there's quite a lot of websites around the world doing various things. It's running on one of our websites, but not one that most people would use.
That's really reassuring that there are that many people out there in the wilds of the internet that care enough about it to install it, which I don't think is always that straightforward. I know it's trying to be straightforward, that's the whole point, but I know from the difficulty you've had, Ben, it's not been that simple.
It's not. It's really not that difficult, to be honest. It does depend a little bit on what system you're using. We ran into issues because we were using an old version of Python.
Lots of people are using CentOS 6, though. I mean, it's a problem I've heard a couple of times.
Yeah, it's not that unusual, but
yeah,
it's certainly pretty straightforward. And one thing they've done that's quite good as well is each certificate is only valid for, I think it's 90 days, so you have to renew them quite frequently. And the argument in favour of this means if you only have to do it every 90 days, you just write a script to do it. If you do it every 2 years, you forget about it and then you throw certificate errors in 2 years' time before you remember that you're supposed to update your certificate.
Now, that sounds like it. If we've got like millions of people writing their own scripts, there should be a system that lets Encrypt automatically update certificates for you.
Yeah, well, there is a tool that does it, and exactly how you script it kind of depends on how you want to, really. But you could, in most, as long as you've got the modern version of Python, you could do it in one line of cron.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a couple of lines of cron.
Oh, it's as simple as grabbing a certificate.
Yeah. The tool, you pretty much just run it with the update flag, and it gets you a new certificate.
Oh, okay.
And installs it.
Oh, it doesn't get any easier than that, then, really.
No, it works. And what's quite interesting is that the tool, we call it the Let's Encrypt tool, but it's not specific to Let's Encrypt. In principle, anyone could set up their certificate authority to do it. And what the people who started it have said is they want other people, they want competition. This wasn't set up to be the only certificate authority anyone uses. But obviously, they can't force other people or other certificate authorities to do this.
So maybe it's worth a recap saying for people who maybe don't know, the way that the connection between your web browser and a remote server is secured is basically by a little bit of interchange, and at the heart of that is trusting a certificate that's offered by the server that you're connecting to. And until now, it's been very difficult to get a free certificate And it's been difficult to get a certificate that you could trust, at least if you weren't a big organisation, and one that was easy to keep up to date. And this is what Let's Encrypt does, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can broadly speaking say that the point of the certificate is, though, that when you communicate with a website, you know it's the real website and not some imposter claiming to be the real website. And the challenge there is when you issue a certificate, you have to know that the person you're issuing it to is really the person running the real website.
Right.
And there's been various ways of doing this through different ones, but there's always been some kind of, not hold up, but some hoop to jump through to prove that you're the real person. Whereas what the sort of client does, the Let's Encrypt client, is it sort of automates that. So you have to run it on the actual web server, and it does some gubbins and goes away. And I actually don't know what it does behind the scenes, but somehow it says, yeah, well, I'm running on the real web server.
Asks for your mother's maiden name.
When you say it's Mozilla and a few other people, that's really underselling it somewhere, isn't it? I mean, it's Mozilla it's also and a massive bunch of like huge trustworthy organisations like the EFF.
Yeah, loads of people are involved at the moment, and it's some pretty big commercial organisations. So they've got like so many things. They've got like the levels of sponsorship depending on how much money you put in. So the two platinum sponsors are Cisco and Akami. Akami are a big content distribution network. So they're putting up a large amount of capital really to get this off the ground, because there's infrastructure. They have to pay for their certificates as well. Their signing certificates and all this sort of thing. So there's quite a few sort of big names lower down the list, sort of gold and silver sponsors. So there's pretty broad commercial support for this. And yeah, as you say, EFF and sort of NGO support as well.
Excellent. It sounds like it's been an incredible success. I'm amazed at the adoption rates and the fact that it's out of beta. It's really good news. Yeah,
I'm a bit surprised at the adoption rates as well. It shows how many people were sort of wanted to do it, but we're too lazy to do it the old way.
Well, I did it once when I had to go. I can't remember who it was, who the certificate authority was, but it was one of the few who you could trust who was doing it for free. And you had to jump through a lot of hoops initially getting it authenticated, as you said, with whoever you said you were. And then it only kind of lasts a year or 18 months. And then that moment comes and goes, as it does when it's a hobby. And, then the certificate's worthless.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the certificate still on my site.
Yeah, it'd be... I don't know how it will work, but in a couple of sort of iterations down the line, I wonder if this will be bundled into the Apache package of common distros. So when you install Apache, you automatically get your certificate.
Yeah. If it can negotiate some kind of authentication, some way of you saying who you are.
Yeah. Right. Let's move on to our second item of news. The US government has, or specifically the White House of the US government, has issued a draft source code policy stating that all publicly funded software should be open source. So anything US taxpayers pay to create has to be released under a open source license. At the moment, this policy is just in draft, so it's not sort of set in stone yet. It's out for
Started that off with a caveat. The United States government, no, not the United States government, the White House. Does that mean that
yes,
the United States government is actually much bigger than the White House, and that some of the things that the White House wants to happen don't actually happen?
I mean, there is. Well, I'm no expert in US politics, but yeah, because obviously you got the Democrats in the White House, or Democrat in the White House, Obama. And I assume are the Democrats around them, I don't know. You got the Republicans controlling one of the other places that is a bit like a pretend House of Lords. To be honest, I don't really understand US politics.
That's rather meta, recursive, a pretend House of Lords.
Yeah, the House of Lords and the House of Commons, they've got two rows of benches facing each other. and there's a big gap in between them, and the gap is the width of 2 swords, so that people sitting in either bench can't start fighting in the middle. Whereas in the US, they sit in sort of a circle shape, so I don't know how they stop them sword fighting.
They have guns.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so this is really good news. This is something that in the UK, all this joking aside, the UK could really learn from if anybody was listening. Open data has been a big movement, but there's very little open source software to back that up, especially in terms of, people get open data, but people don't seem to get the software side.
Yeah, I mean, there has been a move from governments for quite a long time to release software open source, and the UK government does it.
Yeah, the Cabinet Office.
Do it. But it's not. Yeah, but it's not across the board. It's little bits that they feel like opening up. Whereas this would be every single piece of software that's funded by the public is open source. It would also apply retroactively to anything created in-house. You couldn't retroactively apply it to stuff created by consultants, contractors, etc., because of various agreements going on. But that would be the case going forward if this source code policy becomes actual policy rather than draft. So it could.
I think this has every chance of going ahead, all cynicism aside, because so much of the US government software already is open source.
Yeah, it's very hard to argue against giving the people access
to the stuff that they've paid
to create. Yeah. It's who knows how much resistance will be from industry. I don't know. But it's a sensible policy. It's hard to argue against, and let's hope that more governments follow suit.
Where are the software states, and how many hanging chads do they have?
I assume the software. Well, I don't even know what state is Silicon Valley in California.
Yeah,
it must be. That must be the
doesn't
software
something
state.
happen in Utah, or is Sun or SCO or something out there?
In Utah, I have no idea.
I don't know. I'm just pretending to know stuff. I know Wisconsin makes cheese, so you've got to get there for your photo opportunities.
Yeah, we should have an American correspondent for our American stories, or buy an atlas. We'll have a whip round between the three of us. We'll get an atlas.
Yeah, but atlases. I mean, that's a good example of. The Ordnance Survey has that become open now? No. So even though we've paid for it, and for centuries we've been paying for it, it's not our data. It doesn't belong to us. Presumably, in case the Spanish steal it and start getting ideas.
Probably the naval data falls under a different department.
I'm fine with that.
The Ordnance Survey, it's not open source in the way Stallman would say it, but you do have access to it. It's under Crown copyright, and you're free to use it, but not for commercial reasons, I think.
Yeah, I remember, it's been a couple of years since I looked into it, but they created a wonderful kind of API access system to all of the Ordnance Survey data, and you couldn't actually, human beings couldn't get access to it. You could if you bought a license with Crown copyright or whoever happened to own it. And it's a huge missed opportunity if that was actually in the public domain. OpenStreetMap's come and done a very awesome job and shown, I think, what could have happened 10 years ago had the Ordnance Survey done something similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was always a big frustration. But OpenStreetMap, solved the problem themselves. Brilliant.
Right, should we move on to more open source news? This is Vim 8, I don't know how to describe it. I want to say a text editor, but it's more than just a text editor. What is it? It's a way of life.
By enhanced.
Yeah. This is, it's a text editor that probably predates computing. And this is its 8th major version. I think. Well, this is Vim, which isn't the original VI, but the original VI came out in 1976, I think, and this is broadly based on that. And in that time, it's had 8 versions, so they're fairly significant when you hit a major version. So sort of had a look into the new features. And there does look like some quite big ones in there. It's got asynchronous I/O, so you can communicate with other processes in the background. It's got jobs, and I tried doing a search for Vim jobs to see what this would sort of mean, and all I got was a massive list of people trying to hire sysadmins. But I think it's basically allows you more subtle job control than you could in previous versions. It's got GTK3 support. It's got quite a bit of good stuff, really, as you would expect for a major upgrade.
Cool. I think, I mean, I have used Vim for a long time, but the features that I use haven't changed for like the 15 years that I've been using them.
Yeah, nothing major is going to change in Vim ever, probably. But I think the sort of big target of this is it's going to be plugins and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I could see asynchronous I/O, for example, could be really handy for pushing stuff up into cloud services. If you wanted to create a Vim version of Google Docs, you could throw it up as users were typing.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So it does look like there's not necessarily core features in it, but core capabilities that could be exploited through add-ons, scripts, plugins, or those sort of gubbinses. So it's it'll be interesting to see what people do with it.
Do you know how long it's been since the previous major release?
Version 7?
Yeah.
Not off the top of my head.
It's really nice that it's still being developed, but I guess it's so important that it will be.
Yeah, there's the whatchamacallit, NeoVim, the people trying to rewrite it because they think the source code's too much, got too messy over the years. But for the moment, at least, Vim remains the best Vim.
I was trying to look up releases, but I can't do it quickly.
Okay. Right, should we?
Move
swiftly.
It's not that interesting anyway.
So it comes hot on the heels of version 7 that was released at some point. Probably a while ago. We think it was a while ago.
Well, version 7.4 was 7.4.8.231 was released in last year, so who knows?
All right. Right, let's move on. Microsoft. So many conflicting stories about Microsoft in the last year or so, and this one is swinging on the good side of the pendulum again. Microsoft are suing the US government to be able to tell users about data requests. So this is suing basically mean petitioning, not suing as in the legal process, not suing as in trying to get cash out of someone. They want to be able to tell users when the US government makes Microsoft hand over users' data. So all that sort of tracking stuff in Windows 10 that's feeding all your desktop data back to the mothership, they want to be able to tell you when they've had to hand all that over to the government. And maybe we'll be able to, in a year or so's time, be able to see the source code for the government software that's making the requests to Microsoft.
That would be. I don't believe it. I don't believe it'll happen one way or the other. Couldn't Microsoft just stop sending so much stuff?
Well, yeah.
If they really care about the users.
But if you're a US company or a company with offices in the US, you have to obey US law. There's not really a way around that.
No, I meant from Windows.
They could stop sending it back to the mothership.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was being a little bit facetious there because they do collect all that data, but the majority of it, I'm sure, is all the emails and instant messages and all that sort of stuff that they have.
Yeah.
The Skype calls, the Outlook. No, it's not Outlook. Yeah, Hotmail, that's the one. All those sorts of things. So yeah, this is what do they call it? The FISA warrants that basically they can apply to an organisation that tells you have to hand over all this data, but they're applied in a secret court through a secret process, and they have to remain secret.
If only Mike were here, he'd be able to tell us who it is.
I actually don't know who it is. And I don't care enough to look into it.
I'm not willing to furnish you with any further details.
I can mime it for you if you want.
For anyone unaware of what's going on, there is a current court case in the UK where the papers, is it the News of the World? No, they don't exist anymore. The Sun. But anyway, some newspapers want to publish a story about somebody doing something wrong in the bedroom. But somebody who did the something wrong in the bedroom has applied to a court to have what they call a super injunction applied, which means it'd be ever so embarrassing. They might spill their tea if it got out to the wider public.
Yeah.
So the super injunction has been applied to stop the papers talking about it and stop anyone talking about it.
In England and Wales, and nowhere else.
England and Wales.
It's actually just a normal, a standard injunction. It's not a super injunction. If it was super injunction, then we wouldn't even know that an injunction had been applied.
Yeah, a super injunction. It's a super injunction where you're not even allowed to talk to your MP about it.
Is that the one that the footballer got against the newspaper? And it was spoken in Parliament.
That was overturned, wasn't it? Yeah, that couldn't have been a super injunction because you're not allowed to reveal super injunctions under parliamentary privilege, I don't think.
Really?
Yeah, I think this is why they're so obscene. Parliamentary privilege is the principle whereby you can basically say anything in the House of Commons, and if you're an MP, what they're going to do about it. So it's been used over the various years to get bits of stuff that's been classified but pointlessly classified in the public. For example, the location of the post office tower was classified until the 90s or something. And someone pointed out it's that big pointy thing in the middle of London. And now
Barbara Streisand's house as well. We're not allowed to know where that is.
Yeah. No. This is Microsoft and stealing the data.
This is weird, isn't it? I mean, Microsoft, on the face of it, they sound like the goodies, which is confusing because they've always been the baddies, but they're also kind of the baddies as well for collecting the data in the first place. I mean, stuff like Hotmail, fair enough. That is, it's a free service. You go into it of your own with your eyes open, but it won't just be that, will it? It'll be location data and all sorts of other stuff that's being fed back through Windows 10 and through your phones.
Yeah, like every major company, they have good points and bad points. They're not fundamentally evil. They're not fundamentally good. They do different things at different times in contradictory manners. It might be more like an 80s action film where there's a bad dude with a weird accent that we just have to go and fight. But it's not. It's a complex mess that is real life and can't be summed up in
Schwarzenegger, why did you leave me mentally unprepared?
It can only be resolved with one boring sequel after another. After a 10-year wait, after a reboot, yes, Deckard was a replicant.
Right, I think on those wild tangents, we've reached the end of the news.
Do you think in this reformatted thing we should have the halfway reminder now?
That's where the halfway reminder is on the notes.
Yeah, that's because
is it?
The news is...
I read the notes?
I've clicked on every single link in the notes. Yeah. Right, well, I've just been summoned downstairs because my dinner's ready, so we should probably hurry along with a halfway reminder at this point. Still to come, Finds of the Fortnight. And that's it.
Let's crack on with Finds of the Fortnight. A couple of things we've totally forgot to mention for the last few episodes.
Yes.
No.
And now it's too late. So... Joe Ressington is organising basically an afternoon, evening in a pub in London in August. He's called it rather excellently FOSS Talk, and we are going to be there, as are the Ubuntu UK podcast team and a few other people as well. Apologies for being completely unprepared. But I think it's sold out.
Oh dear. Well, you say sold out. It was free. You just had to apply for tickets.
Okay, so yes, all the information's on fosstalk.com. It's us, the Ubuntu UK podcast, Linux Luddites, Stuart Langridge and Dave Megaslippers. And it's Saturday the 6th of August in London. It's a pub venue, and I think it's going to go on till quite late, so it's not particularly child-friendly. And I think Joe Ressington's going to write a blog update on how there may be some space for other people at some other point. But yes, we've promised Joe for ages now to mention it. And we've even put an ad in the magazine that just went to the printers on Friday.
Here's what you could have won.
The other quick semi-find that I wanted to mention was that the developer of Qt browser, which is like, I use it now as my standard browser. It's a web browser written in Python using Qt WebKit. It's using Qt's HTML engine. Is having a crowdfunding campaign to sponsor the developer for a month or several weeks to be able to add a whole new rendering engine to it. So that's another thing worth looking into. If you use Qt browser or you haven't tried it yet, use it. It's brilliant. I've now replaced Firefox with it. But it could. What's
like the main sell of it? Why would I ditch Firefox for it?
Firefox for me is just leaking memory all over the place. I've had to restart our Hangout session because I can see it, the RAM creeping up. Leave 20 tabs open, or even with me, 20 tabs open, and within a few hours, Firefox calls to a halt. Qt browser is much lighter on system resources, but it's the you interact with it through keyboard shortcuts. We put the cheat sheet for those keyboard shortcuts in an old version of Linux Voice, an old copy of Linux Voice. But this is actually really easy to use. If you do Shift and question mark, you can see all of those keyboard controls. And it's things like O will open a new URL, M will make a quick bookmark, O and start typing the name of a bookmark, it'll open it. It gets very quick, very efficient. You can switch between tabs quickly. It doesn't take up any room on the screen. And if all goes well, it'll be using a very modern rendering engine, so it'll be just as compatible as Firefox and Chromium, with which is a slight problem at the moment with so many sites moving away from. I mean, Google Docs and Gmail works, but it's always complaining about the old version of the browser. In addition to that, my own find, I haven't tried it yet. I'm feeling really bad that Andrew's tea is going cold. But it's called, how do you pronounce etc. The part of the file system that holds all of the configuration files in Linux. I found a project called Keeper, etc Keeper. And basically it puts all of your configuration files under version control like Git. So that any changes that you make to configuration files, which I'm sure we've all done, especially on a server, and you always mean to make a backup, but when it's quick and it has to be done in a hurry, you do it. You don't have to worry with Keeper. It's all done for you. Versions you can roll forward and backwards all the way. You don't even have to use Git. It supports lots of other version control systems. I'm going to install it on my own system. It seems like a really cool idea. That's my find. I was emailed a find. I've just remembered. I've got to open my window, from James Eaton. This is from the middle of March, so I'm sorry that I forgot James. He says, I was considering doing a scorched earth install. You know, the one where you delete everything and install a new distro. But I wanted to find a way to reinstall all the software that I had added in the original installation. I did a quick Google search and came up with this web page. It points to dpackage in particular, using dpackage to get all the packages installed as a file. And it's dpkg --get selections, and then pipe that out to a file, installed software.log, he suggests. And then dpkg --set selections, and then pipe in the output to that file will install all of those packages you had installed, which seems like a really neat discovery to me.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of random array of finds and things and Foz Talk Live.
Can I please have a go? Right. So I've found today, in the course of my role as finance director, that the HMRC's software that you download and use to run your payroll and manage your submissions to them, so they know how much tax you should pay, it will stop supporting Windows XP at the end of this tax year. So in 2017, XP, which Microsoft stopped supporting in 2009. Oh dear. Amazing. Well, there's point of sale stuff that's still supporting that.
Okay.
Yeah, because they wanted to get people over to Vista and Windows 7 and stuff, didn't they? Oh, it's Microsoft again. We're like jealous neighbours looking over the fence.
Yeah.
So there is that. The good news, however, is it does support Linux.
This reminds me of a story that didn't the UK government pay a load of money to Microsoft to keep on Windows XP being supported, even though it is well past its end of life.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was it. I found the story. It was £5.5 million.
Lunacy, absolute craziness.
Just to avoid Windows 8.
Yeah.
Actually, to be fair, that's quite cheap to avoid Windows 8.
With that £5.5 million, they could easily have paid some North Korean developer to fork Red Star OS and have rolled that out across the whole government infrastructure. Dear, I don't know. So my other discovery is on Netflix. There's a film called, I think it's called The Deep Web. Be careful what you search for. And that is written and directed by Alex Winter. Does that name ring any bells?
Oh.
That's the chap who played Bill S. Preston in Wild Stallions of Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure fame. So he's now a real grown up with thoughts about issues and things. And I bring it up now because in the very first few frames of it, it starts to talk about Tor and stuff that I recognise and have heard of. So I thought, wow, this might be something that I understand.
Hang on, I'm a bit confused about this, to be honest, because at the end of Bogus Journey, they get in the telephone box that sends them forwards and backwards in time, and they don't get in the journey. They come back from it, having spent the next 20 years practicing guitar, so they could master it for the final gig. So is that just finished? He's just gone back to the 80s, I assume, to play that gig, and now he's come back forward to real time, having mastered the guitar and decided to start.
I don't think it's 20
films.
years. They had babies on their backs.
Yes,
I think the inference is that it's they were away for at least 9 months plus the length of time it would take a newborn baby to develop into a slightly larger baby.
Okay.
And they had beards as well, so what's that? A few weeks.
They're also working on a sequel, Bill and Ted's Part 3.
No! Why?
It's inevitable, but I read an article about it just in the last 7 days. In fact, did you say it was Alan Winter? I keep thinking it's Alex Winter. Right, so he's producing it, and I think he's working on the screenplay, but apparently Keanu Reeves has said he's in on it as well, according to him. So...
How sad.
Keanu Reeves has been playing that character in every film for the last 20 years. He might as well play it once more in Bill and Ted.
When somebody makes a film that's halfway good, they should build a big pyramid and lock everybody who made it in the pyramid and seal it up.
All right, King Minos.
Won't that just make the inevitable sequels worse?
Yeah, more like Independence Day then.
Oh, sorry, those were my discovery/finds.
Right. I guess that leaves my finds. I've got three. I'll start with the most recent. There's a Librographics art exhibition on at the University of Westminster Harrow campus. And Librographics is basically, in its simplest definition, it's art made with free software, but it's more than that. It's art that takes inspiration from free software, really, or artists who are part of the open source community and get inspiration through that, really. And it's quite a small exhibition. It's not massive, but it's you can go there. It's on until the 22nd of May, I think. And have a look around. They've got some books about free software and that sort of thing. They've got pictures. It's art. I understand some of it. Some of it's flashy colours to me. But yeah, I was there. I just went along to the last day of the Librographics meeting yesterday, well, on Monday, and I had a look around there at the same time.
That's good. That's nice. An excellent thing for them to do.
Yeah, it's good. Right, next find, the microbit. This is the BBC's new computery what's it thingy that they're giving out to all Year 7 students at some point soon.
How old is Year 7? Let's translate into real numbers.
Then you add 5.
12-year-olds.
Is that right? Yeah.
Okay.
Around there. It's either 11 and 12 or 12 and 13. But that ballpark. The middle ones are 12 anyway. Giving out to all students of roughly 12 to try and get them excited about computing. And it's an interesting little device. I've got it here with me. It's got a grid of 25 LEDs on the front. It's got a button either side of that. So if you imagine something that you purpose built to play Snake on, it's probably looks about like that. It's about half the size of a credit card. You can plug it in via USB and upload software to it. You can also do it over Bluetooth. And there's a little battery connector jobby on it. But what actually impressed me is how easy it is to get started. There's always this sort of thing with new technology that, it can really vary. Sometimes you've got to install this, sometimes you've got to try and get that running, but that sort of can't work with this thing, and it can get into a bit of a mess. And I think the Arduino did a really good job of that. They got it quite a nice little interface running, but you still had to install it. Raspberry Pi was pretty bad when it started with the DD and stuff, but it's got a lot better since, with noobs and just copying stuff onto the SD card. With the microbit, you don't have to install anything. You plug it in through the USB port and you go to microbit.co.uk, I think the website is. And it all runs in the browser. And once it's running your browser, you click download file, and then all you have to do is save it, because the microbit itself registers as a USB storage device. It's like a USB memory stick, and you just copy it across and it runs. And it's ridiculously easy to get started. It's a little bit limited in what you can do to it. It's not all things to all programmers, and it's never going to be. It's almost a little toy device to get kids interested in it. Compared to an Arduino, compared to a Raspberry Pi, there's a lot of things that you can't do with it. But it's a great little device for getting kids interested in computing, I think.
Oh, that's a surprisingly positive review.
It's... Well, might as well be honest. The coding environment was supported by Microsoft, and there's 4 languages it supports. 2 of them are Microsoft's. One they call it Touch Develop, and the other one is Blocks. And to be honest, I wasn't a massive fan of either one of them, but you could sort of see how they worked. And you can also run Python on it, and you can run a sort of version of JavaScript. It's kind of like a cross between JavaScript and Scratch. You sort of drag and drop blocks together and they clip in, but it is actually JavaScript code. I've enjoyed having a bit of a play with it over the last about a week or so now. Can't quite decide if I've got like a grand project in mind for it, or if I'm just going to keep it as a little bit of a toy.
Yeah, it sounds like those little mini controller boards you had, like with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, would be more practical for projects because they were so cheap and you could just secrete them somewhere, or Pi Zeros.
Yeah, anything like that, you're gonna be able to do a lot more with, but at the same time, you have to know a lot more to be able to do something with it.
Yeah.
With these, it is a very low barrier to entry.
I have to say, the system that you've just described, where you use a website to download basically a compiled binary that you just drop onto it, sounds like a really good idea.
Cool.
Yeah, the only other thing that I've used similar to it, I think, actually, to be fair, I think the Codebug is a bit similar, but I've never used one of those. But the other one is the BeagleBone Black. That ran its own web server on it, and it ran its own development environment in a web page on it, on their web server. So you just plugged it in, went to the IP address of it. I can't remember if there was a nice way of finding out the IP address of it now. But yeah, and that worked in a similar way, but it wasn't designed really for beginners. It was intended for a more advanced audience. It was a much more powerful device. Right. And I have one more find this fortnight. And that is, I don't quite know what to describe it. It's a post on Pastebin, I guess, or Ghostbin, a version of Pastebin, by the chap who... Do you remember Hacker Team? We talked about it must have been a year or so ago. There were some... basically hackers for hire, some people who took down all sorts of things on behalf of governments of varying repute. And yeah, some chap managed to break into their servers and reveal all about their various nefarious practices. He's written up what he did. He's still, obviously hasn't publicly identified himself, but he's written all about how, well, it goes through a lot of things actually, how to protect yourself, how the sort of structure of the attack worked, how basically how to think like someone who breaks into nefarious organisations and reveals all. And it does make quite a good read. I believe it was originally in Spanish, and the version I've seen is an English translation thereof. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting read if you're interested in computer security.
Did you learn anything? I mean, is there anything that you change about what you do using the same passwords for Linux voice forums as you do for your Gmail?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's anything directly I'd change, but it's...
Yeah.
I don't know. Can't say now, really.
Yeah.
You might be listening.
Right. They are fines?
They are fines.
I think that's it for this special edition of the podcast then, isn't it?
I think so too. Yeah. I think we've got no mic.
Yeah.
And therefore, without Mike, things have just fallen apart. And without him, we can't know who the celebrity threesome injunction was about either.
The clues are all in the podcast. If you
play it backwards.
Okay, so thanks everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Bye bye.